Hello, how are we doing today? Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time zone you're in, or whatever time of day you may be watching this stream or the recording of it. Hi, I'm JoeG, as my new GitHub README says. Today we're going to be covering our contact application and making it a mobile app now. It's native, well, I don't want to say it's natively mobile. It's mobile friendly, aka responsive, because we're using Bootstrap and it's just the way it's set up. I'm going to take it now and show you how, using a toolkit like React Native, we can go and turn that into a native app that can run on an iOS or Android device. So we're going to be working with this repository, Contacts React Native Client, which is going to be the client app for this contacts application. So I already put a README up here with kind of the steps because I was playing around with it on the stream on Thursday, but had some issues with bandwidth and it kept cutting in and out. So I figured I would start all over again. Let's get started. We're going to spend most of the time here in Visual Studio Code Insiders Edition. Now I have a terminal install on here, one that I actually like to use a lot, or I can open up the Windows terminal. Your choice, doesn't matter. This will work on Windows or on iOS devices. I'm hosting on the Windows machine right now, but I can give this demo on iOS device. So to start, you need to make sure you have Node.js installed, and I put a link on the README file for it. I've already done that here, plus I've already installed React Native, and I'm going to walk through it again. If you want to find out more about it, I actually have a link on this doc as well as it's already opened up here. To go here, you go to reactnative.dev and has all the instructions on getting started. So if I click to learn the basics, it says hello world. You can actually use it through something called Expo, which is loading on the browser itself, a simple JavaScript, TypeScript app that will run. So here it's actually running in the browser, and we can do that too with our app, and we will a little bit. But right now we're just going to play around with this. And to see that it works, I can do hello world live on Coding with JoeG. In a couple of seconds, it updates right here, and I can simulate what it looks like on an iOS or Android just from the site itself, which is pretty cool. So if you go to the docs page, you'll see a lot more about it, including setup and everything that's basically. I'm going to take a look at the environment setup just to show you a couple of different options. Oops, sorry. There are two primary options that you can do with this. The first is using Expo, which is a tool that the React Native team has built that kind of provides some command line tools plus some native controls out of the box. You can also use the React Native client. Expo is geared more towards people that are not familiar with mobile development. It'll do a lot of the work for you. The React Native client does some of the work for you, but it gives you a lot more fine-tuned control over what you have. For now, we're just going to work with the Expo client. And I've actually never worked with the Expo client. Every demo I've given has been with the command line, so it might be a learning experience for both. So first step is I want to install, if you've never used Node before, npm is the Node package manager in the .NET world. It's similar to NuGet packages. So it says install globally the expo-cli. So let's go and do that. So I'm going to make sure I'm in the right directory. Not that it matters because I'm installing it globally right now. I've already done this, but it's going to go out, check to see what the latest version is, see if I have it installed on my machine. If I do, this should go pretty quick. If there is an update, it will update that. And it's going to probably find one or two things because I did this over the weekend and a lot of NPM packages seem to update every day. Well, that's working. Actually, maybe what we'll do is split screen this. And we don't need to show this. And let's put this over here. Why don't I just do this? And now they're split screen. This will take a minute or so for it to go through. It's probably not behaving UI wise now because I resized it. But it's done. So next step would be to get started. I'm going to take a little deviation from there getting started only because I'm going to use a different command line first. So I put this section in here for actively developing an API. I want us to use TypeScript for it. So I am going to do the TypeScript based install. So this is npx create React Native. Now npx is a tool that's kind of like npm. This goes out and lets you run scripts that are live. So here I'm running the script, which will download everything I need. Whereas I technically didn't really need to do npm install Expo CLI down because I just copied everything. This allows me to go directly out there. So we're going to say create a React Native app. And then I'm going to call it contacts. And then I want to use the template with TypeScript. If I type the command correctly, this should create the application for it. I'm going to shrink this a little bit because we don't need a lot of that. Right now it is installing Yarn, and I'm going to make this a little bit big for us so you can see everything that's happening on the stream. Here it installed the script in 1 second, pretty much downloaded this script. Now it's using something called Yarn. Yarn is a newer package manager where NPM is built by the Node community. Yarn is a Facebook, aka React Natives team version of it that does some better caching and some additional scripting for it. Now our project's done and we're literally ready to start it. So let's go to CD contacts. If I list out here, I should see a bunch of files. We'll see some more of that in a minute. Let's make you bigger now. And I can just take you off of docked. And oops, sorry, let's put you back to full. And maybe shrink the font just a little bit. So if I look at the directory now, if I open up the Windows or File Explorer here, I'll see I have a new contacts directory, which has a node directory, a GitHub, ignore by default, an app.txt, and a couple other files. I'm going to kind of explain all these a little bit, and then we'll go towards how we start creating our API out. So the first thing is our node modules folder. Now what I always tell everyone is don't open up this unless you have a very strong stomach, because there are a lot of files in here. See, this is equivalent to like the bin directory or your packages folder in the .NET. These are all the individual modules or packages or programs that this application is using. I might not be using them directly, could be using some of them indirectly, like React Native Community, could be using ANSI Colors, ANSI Cyan, ANSI Escapes, etc. Typically, you never need to do this. if you check the git ignore, it'll tell you normally that that folder should not be checked in. So these files are ignored because you don't want to check this in. That'll get built. That can get recreated. And it gets recreated through this yarn lock file. This yarn lock file contains everything that you're touching. So in the Windows, or sorry, the .NET world is equivalent to your packages.config or your CS proj file where everything is installed. This kind of tells us what's needed. And then you have the packages, which kind of is a higher level of that. And we're going to cover these scripts later on. You could ignore them for now. README file just kind of talks about the TypeScript sample, what to do. This is kind of what we did right here. And then how you can create your project. We've already done that. Hey, cool. Hey, Chris. About time you followed me, Chris. Thanks for joining. Probably because I'm using JavaScript now and he'll attend it. So where was I? Oh, so this kind of gives you all the steps. I'm not sure why it exactly gives you all that because you do that when you first create it, but in other case it's there. And we can go through here and look at the docs and see more about what it covers, which we're not going to really talk about much. Yes, thank you. This kind of talks about how we want to use TypeScript. And I'm going to cover a little of that as we go, but for the most part, a lot of this is just going to be how we get to work with it. Actually, setting up a brand new MacBook. Nice. Yeah, it's a pain. I think I took a weekend to set up this streaming box that I got. Most of it was just downloading stuff and then waiting 20 minutes to install and then figuring out it's needed. And I always say I want to build an image or at least build a list of tools that I want to install on my machines. But I usually remember, and I found the script like you just said that does all that. Yeah, when I set up my last MacBook, I was able to run a script. I found something, I forget the GitHub repo that I found it from, but I pretty much ran that and downloaded a lot of things. Problem was when I did it, it was on my work MacBook, which the permissions, as you know, are kind of a lot tighter, so it was harder. But the Windows PC I have for streaming was a lot easier, so found a couple of scripts to do a lot of good stuff. There's actually quite a few Mac repos, like getting started as a React developer or JavaScript developer, and it installs things like iTerm and Node and other things like that. I always find them. I always find that I'm missing one thing here or there, or there's things that you set up once, like in this particular case, my terminal settings. You know, I always forget how I do this part here, and I got to go through 3 or 4 or 5 different blog posts to find those, which is always a pain. But then I always say to myself, oh, I'll just write a script myself and do it. And then I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that because by the time I rebuild a computer again, things are going to be different. Yep, I have to set up iTerm with the fancy setup I have, like you have. Yeah, this is once I discovered this particular setup. This is a stripped down version because it's on the Windows. My iTerm on the Mac is very different, but well, not very different. It looks very similar. There's just some font differences, but I don't know how I can ever go back to a command prompt. When I open up a command prompt now, I'm like, well, what are you doing to me? Like even here on my Windows box, I have PowerShell Core, which has it and does the basic list. Oh, hello, Lumjacker. Chris followed me. I got 2 followers today. It's awesome. How are you doing, Lumjacker? Where are you calling from? Yeah, it's Powerline 10K, Chris, for the Windows box. But if you look at my Bash script for my Linux, this one uses the ZSH. I always forget how to pronounce that. And this one uses not the Powerline, but I forget what the other. It might be Powerline. Yes, I use SEH. Am I a web developer? You can kind of say that. I lead a team of web developers and other software developers, but I do a lot of coding on the side and occasionally at work. What about you, Lumjacker? As you see, Chris, I have pretty much very similar ones. This one is actually my favorite setup, SCH. I have a lot of custom scripts that I built with it. Let's see. So where were we? Oh, so the last part about this is the app TSX. So TXS is TypeScript, and this is essentially the application. It says here, open up app.tsh to start working on your app, which is what I did. If I want to see the app, this tells me here what I need to do. I can't do Yarn iOS because I'm not working on iOS or on a Mac right now. So I can do Yarn Web or Yarn Android. I'm going to do Yarn Web right now just because I didn't have the I don't have the emulator started. We'll start that in a little. If I do Yarn Web, essentially you'll notice it ran a separate command called Expo Web. If I go to the package JSON, you'll see something here called scripts. So I did Yarn Web, which essentially said run Expo with the web. Not exactly sure why they have these shortcuts. I guess it's easier to remember those couple of things. And because I have another window open, it popped up on another window. So let's bring it here. Nice. Where are you calling from, or where are you dialing in from, Lumjacker? I showed a front end on this app with the context management using ASP.NET Web Core. Now I'm planning on building out a React Native endpoint to it for here. So this is using something called the Metro Bundler, which is kind of like a web server. What ends up happening with the React Native app is it natively, or when you're in development, builds a web service and then translates the JavaScript into your web client. When it goes to compile time for your Android and iOS devices, it actually takes those and builds native components on it, which is why you see here on the screen, you can run it as on the Android device emulator, iOS, run in web browser. I can send a link so anyone on my network can view it. And if you scroll up, there is where is it? There should be a barcode that I can see. That just gave me a link. Oh, if I do run on Android device, it will give me a gigantic barcode that, yeah, I'm going to get this read that it could not run the emulator because I don't have it started yet, so just ignore that. You choose to run in web browser, and there you see it says open up a TSX to start saving your work. So cool. It's running, and that's what this says right here. So let's change this to welcome new followers. And then let's do Chris and Lumjacker. Now, by the time you see this on the other screen, it would have been refreshed. So if you notice, Here, this went green for a second and then came back with all the development part. But the actual application itself hot reloaded and changed for me. So to kind of show some of that, let's go and let's do these things side by side for a minute. So let's do you. You can do that. Pick you. And I'm just going to take this away. Hit save. Notice that went green pretty quickly again. And there's the hello follow us. You can actually do real live debugging and testing as you're building out your application. If you do something silly, like this, or make a relatively newbie mistake, you'll get the full browser debugging experience. If you were watching carefully, over here there's a switch that says production mode. So this is the logger of everything that happens. You'll also notice that Visual Studio Code is logging the same thing. So I get the same experience in Visual Studio Code or the browser. If I switch it to production mode and I hit refresh, we're going to get a different message altogether, I believe. Oh, guess not. I might have to restart it, but it should show another message. I'm going to take it off production mode for now. And that is pretty much it with it. So I'll explain a little bit about React Native itself and how it works. So let's put you back on full screen. Essentially, like I said, it takes JavaScript, or in this case TypeScript, compiles it, runs it locally, and then when you're building it for an Android or iOS, it creates either an Xcode application or the Objective-C app for it, or a Java application for the Android device. So it runs just the same way it would as a normal app if you built it in their native environments, but allows you to run it once, or write it once and run it on multiple platforms. So let's see a little bit about the actual page. So this is a simple app where the view and the class are all in the same. Now there's lots of different patterns and frameworks that you can do. I'm not going to cover all of them. We're just going to kind of get this working for now. I'll give a couple different samples of the code to start, and then probably tomorrow we'll build the actual application. Today we're going to lay all the foundational work to kind of get us ready. So if you're familiar with C# development, a lot of this looks pretty similar. There's just some slight differences. If you're a JavaScript person at heart, a lot of this will look pretty similar too. So lines 1 and 2, we have what are called the imports. Imports tells, in this case, the JavaScript runtime, aka React, at some point, to import an object called React from this package called React. So it's going to come here in the node modules directory and look for a application called, or a package, component, blah, 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 whatever you want to call it, called React. And like I said, if you are sick stomach, don't look at this because there are lots of files here. Anyway, way down in the R's, there is a package here called React. Then it says here, I want you to import. Now this bracket here is telling us we're importing multiple types. So import the component called style sheet, text, and view from the package or component React Native. Now within VS Code, it's telling me actually where I get that from. So C project / contact React Native client is the root folder on my hard drive. And then contacts is the application, and then node modules, which is here, and then the React Native. Actually, no, it's the React Native client. It's under types. And then here you see React and React Native. So if I open this up, you'll see a bunch of other ones here. Now the next part is the actual class definition. So there's lots of different lines here because it's doing a couple of different things. We'll start off from left to right. First, we're doing export, which says make this available, essentially in the C# world, or it's the public saying I want others to be able to see this. Default, I'm not 100% sure on the definition. The way I remember it, or the way I think of it, is this is the primary application or the primary function in here. If someone just refers to app.tsx, call this. Now function is just a C# or a JavaScript keyword that says this, which is called app, is a function. Now this app is returning what's called a view. So here it returns a combination of HTML and JavaScript that will get rendered in the code. So if we look at our screen that we had up here, this is the entire view. So it rendered the text, welcome new followers. So we look here, we have a view that has a style. I'll cover the style in a second. That has a text element that says welcome new followers, and that's what we saw on the screen. So if you're used to HTML development, you'll see this style is very similar. Now I could have hard-coded something in here like color blue. Let's just cut this for a second. And then that should work. And if I go back to here, it doesn't work. And what did I miss? Color is probably not supported. No, that's what I get for trying to impromptu stuff on the fly. I think it might be single quotes, but that's not my point. You don't want to do that anyway. Here we're saying we're going to use a style defined as styles.container. So we look further down at the constant defined on line 12. We are defining a constant called styles. The constant.styles, which is essentially an object, saying this is based off the style sheet component. Remember, we imported the style sheet component up here on line 2. And I want you to create a style sheet. Within this style sheet, we are going to create a container. And this is a typical best practice or standard for here. You outline what your container is going to be. And I know, Chris, bear with me. I know you don't like CSS much, but this is the default out of the box. So here it supports pretty much any CSS. It will translate it. The 4 sample ones is flex 1, saying we're going to use flexbox with the basis of 1 or 100%. We're going to set the background color to the hex code FFF. This supports RGB codes. It also supports color constants. So I can say red as the background color. And as soon as I hit save, you notice it compiled. And if I look at this page, it's now, ooh, that was. So I'm going to put this back to white. It supports, like I said, this hexadecimal or RGB colors. And I don't know RGB colors off the top of my head. It supports, I think, like 64 different colors. If you go to the React Native dev, which I did have open, but it's now closed. And go to docs. There is a color somewhere here, more resources. Let's type in color. There's a whole section. There it is, color reference. So here supports RGB, so I can do any of these 6 different RGB formats. Oh, I didn't know this. It supports hue saturation lightness. That's a new one for me. Name colors. So I was really tempted to Alice Blue because I can remember how many websites I built back in the day that were Alice Blue as the background. It was a very common choice for me. And I think that's it, yeah. You can always come back here. So a lot of your HTML skills really translate well over to the React Native standpoint, which is what they wanted to do. And then align items, center, and justify. I can do this. Left. Actually, no, this would be top. No, this is center. I should get IntelliSense. I don't know why I'm not getting IntelliSense for it. Here it goes. So I can go change any one of these. Right now we're back to the normal except for pound FSF. So let's say I want to add a button to this. I can just type in button. You notice because I'm using Visual Studio Code, it's giving me the ability to automatically import it because it knows that there is a class or a component inside of the React Native, which is already referenced, called button, and it's going to give me the option to do that. So as soon as I hit tab, it added the button right here. And you notice style sheet is semi-grayed out. That's because I don't have the full statement completion here. So I'm going to do button, and I think it's value equals, no, it's text. No, title equals hello. And then let's close that. Hit save. I got the property rate. I don't know why it's still underlined. Oh, because I need the on press, and I don't really have the on press done. We're going to cover that later. But now if I look here at our sample, we should have a button called hello. So that was pretty easy. Just not style component. Yes. JS is the bane of everyone's existence. That's why Anders created TypeScript to make it easier. And I don't usually do JavaScript on the fly, especially when I'm doing presentations or live things. I like to script it out because I always miss a semicolon or get something wrong. Now we have that. If I add the on key press, and this, I believe I just do what is it? Equals, and then now it's, what is it, on press. I forget the syntax. Let me get the on press syntax from here. So I said I don't like doing it on the fly because I forget things. Where's my sample? Where's my sample? Oh, you're supposed to have a sample here working for me. There it goes. On, it's tilde. I always forget that. Let's just copy that out and change this right here. Now alert's going to complain because I don't have that in there. So I'm going to use my little shortcut here and do the add alert. And it's going to say simple button press. So now I save it, come back here, click hello. I don't know if it refreshed yet. refresh, sure, hello, hey, why don't you work? That should work. Alert, simple button press. What did I miss? What did I miss? Press. No, that's right. Huh, it's not working in the web view. It's only working on here. Interesting. I wonder if there's a bug in here because it's not executing. Let's do this. I think this is the right syntax since that's not working. And then I'm going to do a console log button. Are you complete now? Right there. You shouldn't be complaining, TypeScript. Oh, right. What did I get wrong? Got the new class. Let's just do this. Oh, because it's probably multi-line. I should probably create a function for it. But in the meantime, we'll just do this console.log. Hello. And let's delete this and that. Oh, I know what I did. I missed out on a secondary one. I should be able to do the alert here. Sometimes the worst enemy alert button pressed. Now, normally you want to put this on 2 lines, but for some reason the button press isn't working. So this will allow us to at least see that it's going. So hit this and it didn't work, but we should see in the log that we have it. And we don't. Why don't we see it? The log of here. Later, Chris. Let's see the console as I clicked. Oh, yeah, see, there it goes. Working now. I don't know why the alert's not going. That's weird. Anyway, I'll look at that another time. So that's pretty much the bare basics of React Native. Next step is we want to get ready for the show tomorrow. We want to generate the API client. Now, if you're new to the show or watching, we are going to base this on the C# ASP.NET app that we build called Coding with JoeG. We look here, this is the website. We're essentially going to kind of rebuild this site in React Native. So essentially, I'm going to kind of recreate this part. This part here, once the logins happen, this part here uses an API in the backend. The login takes a second or so the first time. This is all coming from an API. That API definition is at here. If we look here, it's using Swagger, and I need to change this to API. It's not contacts, but swagger.json. So we're going to take this Swagger file, which outlines the application for us, and we're going to create a JavaScript client out of it. There's a couple of different ways to do this. I found the easiest tool of them all, there goes my calendar for everyone, is this tool called Open API Tools. So if you go to github.com/Open API Tools, they have a library that does a lot of this. Luckily, I scripted most of that because I was playing around with it to get it to work. So you can also go to README file to see that. And we are covering the mature API, even though I want to kind of show us how to build it from scratch. So we're going to need to add a couple of packages. So let's do this yarn add. Let's exit from the client. We're going to do a yarn add. Now that was super quick to add, at least the first two parts, because I actually already added it yesterday. And that's the beauty of yarn. And now I'm going to go and add in the CLI to do this. Now the difference between these two steps, Axos allows us to do some of the HTTP calls. It has nothing to do with React or React Native. This is just a JavaScript library that works well from what I understand. I've never used it before, so we're going to kind of experiment with it together tomorrow. The difference that we're going to end up doing is we're going to create a yarn script that allows us to kind of update the API definition on the fly. If your API is not changing or you're building an app off of someone else's API, you can just run this command right here. But here, because we might change the API over time, we are going to give us a command to do it. So, this should be -CLI. Yeah, look, that caused a problem yesterday. They changed from Open Web API, Open API -generator to Open API -generator CLI. So let me make a directory here, mkdir API. You can put this wherever you want. I'm going to call it API because it's just a little bit cleaner. And then